Hello?
Ah! Layla, get back in your cell. Don't make me get the hose.
A woman named Annabella Coots passed away in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1979, and she had absolutely no idea that her late husband's surname would soon become one of the most recognized names on the planet. Her husband was Arthur Cyril Doubtfire. Mrs. Doubtfire was a real person, and her story has never been properly told until now. Most videos about this movie cover the 4.5 hours of makeup, the improvised scenes, and the deleted footage everyone's already heard about. But there's an entire hidden layer underneath this film that connects to real tragedies, secret family cameos, casting decisions that would have created completely different movies, and a controversy in Britain that literally changed how an entire country rates films. That Woman in Edinburgh is where we start. Number 1. The real Madame Doubtfire. Back in 1975, a young writer named Anne Fine was walking her child to primary school in Edinburgh when she passed a corner shop on Howe Street and noticed something unusual about the sign hanging above the door. The sign read, "Madame Doubtfire, cast-off clothing of all description, invites inspection." Annabella Coots owned that shop, and her life story reads like something from another century because it was. Born in 1886 in Aberdeen, she started working as a fish worker at 15 and married at 20. Her husband Arthur enlisted in the Scottish Rifles, became a bugler, shipped off to the Western Front, and never came home. What Annabella did next defined the rest of her life. She opened a second-hand goods shop and named it after him, spending decades sitting outside in shawls while cats gathered around her. Locals described her as feisty, and nobody outside Edinburgh knew her name existed. Anne Fine filed that name away somewhere in her memory, and 11 years later, in 1986, she needed a name for a divorced father who disguises himself as an elderly Scottish nanny. Doubtfire came rushing back to her, and the rest became film history. What makes this remarkable is that Anne Fine had no idea who Annabella actually was. She just liked the name on a shop sign she passed one morning. Annabella died in 1979 without any clue that her late husband's surname would become one of the most recognized character names in cinema. Fine put it this way in 2023. It does seem very strange that a 30-year-old person strolling around with their child can set off a chain of events that mean everybody in the entire world knows the name Madame Doubtfire. A fish worker from Aberdeen, a bugler killed in the trenches, a second-hand clothing shop in Edinburgh. That's where Mrs. Doubtfire actually comes from. Not a writer's room, not a focus group, but a real widow honoring her dead husband. And the real-life inspiration doesn't stop there, because Robin Williams based the character on someone from his own past, his childhood nanny, and when British tabloids found out about her, they launched a full-scale manhunt to track her down. Before we crack on with the rest, please subscribe to my channel and like the video. I'd appreciate the algorithm boost immensely. Thanks a lot. Number 2. The Nanny Hunt. Robin Williams grew up with a nanny he called Lolly, and she helped raise him during his childhood in Michigan. He credited her with shaping his sense of humor, his warmth, and his ability to connect with children in a way that felt genuine. When Mrs. Doubtfire became a worldwide phenomenon, British tabloid reporters decided they wanted to find her. They tracked Lolly down to a nursing home in a small Michigan town. And what happened next was exactly what you'd expect from tabloid journalism. Photographers showed up, reporters descended on the facility, and the local newspaper ran a story with the headline, "The Real Mrs. Doubtfire." Lolly wanted nothing to do with any of it. She downplayed her connection to Williams and refused to engage with the attention. But the reporters kept digging anyway, and that's when they discovered something unexpected. Lolly hadn't just been Robin Williams' nanny, she'd also worked for Mr. and Mrs. Lyle Waggoner, the TV actor best known from The Carol Burnett Show, which meant she'd raised children in two separate Hollywood-adjacent households decades apart, without anyone ever connecting the dots. This detail matters because it shows how small the world actually is. A woman in a Michigan nursing home, completely anonymous to the outside world, shaped the childhood of one of the most famous comedians who ever lived while also having ties to classic television history that nobody bothered to document until reporters came looking for a headline. The real Mrs. Doubtfire, the actual inspiration for the character, spent her final years in obscurity while being quietly connected to two corners of Hollywood that never overlapped until this film brought them together. But if hidden Hollywood connections are what you're looking for, we need to talk about the bartender in the pool scene, because that's Robin Williams' half-brother, and his story ends in tragedy. Number 3. Dr. Toad. Watch the pool scene again, the one with the run-by fruiting moment everyone remembers, and pay attention to the bartender in the background. The credits list him simply as Dr. Toad. His real name was Robert Todd Williams, Robin's older half-brother, and his presence in that scene tells a story the film never acknowledges. Robert went by Todd in real life, and his childhood nickname was Toad, which came from his middle name. The doctor part he added himself later on. He wasn't an actor by any stretch. He was an actual bartender who'd worked in San Francisco, Chicago, and even Kingston, Jamaica over the years. Robin put him in the film for one simple reason. He wanted to be around his brother. Williams told interviewers that Toad was outrageous, maybe even more than him, and as hard as that is to believe, he insisted it was true. He added that in certain small towns, locals would recognize him as Toad's brother rather than the other way around. This wasn't just a cute cameo thrown in for family fun. Robert had built an entire life outside his famous brother's shadow. In 1993, the same year Mrs. Doubtfire was filmed, he co-founded Toad Hollow Vineyards in Healdsburg, California, and the winery eventually grew to 120,000 cases and won medals at competitions. Robert Todd Williams died on August 14, 2007 at 69 years old from complications after heart surgery, and according to people close to Robin, the loss devastated him in ways that changed everything. That death contributed to Robin resuming drinking after years of sobriety. Robin Williams died almost exactly 7 years later, to the day. The bartender in the pool scene isn't just an extra filling space in the background. He's a window into Robin Williams' real family, and a reminder that the people who matter most to us often aren't the ones the public ever gets to see. Speaking of hidden connections, the animation that opens the film has a secret buried in it too, and it involves the same animator who was working on the genie in Aladdin at the exact same time. Number 4. The Chuck Jones cartoon. The film opens with a cartoon called Pudgy and Grunge featuring a green parrot and a blue cat, and most people assume it's just standard animated filler to establish the character's job. That assumption is completely wrong. Chuck Jones directed that cartoon. The Chuck Jones behind Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Wile E. Coyote. This marked his first work for 20th Century Fox in his entire legendary career. Jones assembled a team that included legendary animators Bill Littlejohn and Tom Ray. But here's the detail that never gets mentioned. One of the younger animators on that project was Eric Goldberg, and at the exact same time, simultaneously, Goldberg was also animating the genie in Disney's Aladdin to the voice of Robin Williams. Two major Robin Williams animation projects running in parallel with the same animator working on both. What audiences see in the finished film is barely 1 minute of that cartoon, but Jones and his team actually animated 5 full minutes of footage. The complete version wasn't publicly available until it appeared as a DVD bonus feature years after the theatrical release. And there's another layer to this story. Pudgy and Grunge are a deliberate parody of Tweety and Sylvester, but Chuck Jones was initially reluctant to do it. He told Columbus that spoofing those characters felt like asking Disney to make fun of Mickey Mouse. The problem was that Friz Freleng created Tweety and Sylvester, not Jones, which made the whole situation awkward for him professionally. A legendary animator, an uncomfortable parody he didn't want to make, and a hidden 5-minute cartoon that most audiences have never seen. All of that lurks behind what looks like a throwaway opening sequence. But the deepest connection between Mrs. Doubtfire and another iconic film isn't hiding in the animation. It's in the wig, because the same person who created Mrs. Doubtfire's hair also designed Edward Scissorhands' look. Number 5. The Wig. The Oscar for Best Makeup went to 3 people that year: Greg Canham, V. Neal, and Yolanda Tusieng. V. Neal alone has won 3 Academy Awards for Beetlejuice, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Ed Wood. But the hidden story belongs to Tusieng. Yolanda Tusieng created Mrs. Doubtfire's distinctive wig, that gray bun with the soft curls that everyone recognizes. Chris Columbus brought her a photograph of his own grandmother and told her that's how he envisioned Mrs. Doubtfire looking on screen. Tusieng got as close to that photograph as she could, but what most people don't realize is that she'd done this kind of iconic work before. Years earlier, she'd created another hairstyle that became permanently lodged in pop culture: the spiky, wild, jet black hair of Edward Scissorhands. The same woman gave Edward his nightmarish silhouette, and Mrs. Doubtfire her cozy, grandmotherly warmth. 2 completely opposite visual identities, both connected to Tim Burton's creative orbit, both designed by the same hands. One hairstylist shaped 2 of the most visually distinctive characters of the early 90s, and almost nobody outside the industry knows those looks came from the same person. Everything we've covered so far happened before the film was released to the public. But the strangest story connected to Mrs. Doubtfire might be what happened after it opened in Britain, where the film was essentially banned for children, and that controversy changed British film ratings permanently. Number 6. The UK rating drama. When Mrs. Doubtfire opened in Britain in January 1994, the BBFC assigned it a Certificate 12, and at that time in the UK, a Certificate 12 was a hard age restriction. No one under 12 could enter the theater under any circumstances, even with a parent present. Fox had requested a PG certificate for the film, but the BBFC objected to sexual innuendo and some of the language in certain scenes. Fox refused to make cuts to get the lower rating and accepted the 12 instead. Parents across Britain were furious about the decision. This was marketed as a family comedy based on a beloved British children's book, and now families couldn't bring their young children to see it in theaters. The BBFC received, by their own account, plenty of angry letters from parents who had not been permitted to take their children to see the film. This wasn't just a temporary complaint that faded away. Film historians have documented that the Mrs. Doubtfire controversy, alongside similar backlash to early Pierce Brosnan Bond films that also received 12 certificates, became one of the contributing factors that led the BBFC to reconsider the entire rating system. A trial run of something called PG-12 happened at a cinema in Norwich in late 2001, and then in August 2002, the BBFC formally introduced the 12A certificate, which allows any child to attend if accompanied by an adult. A Robin Williams comedy about a divorced dad wearing a wig played a documented role in reshaping how an entire country rates films. The 12A certificate exists in part because of Mrs. Doubtfire. Before we wrap up, there's one more moment from production that deserves attention, and it happened during the court scene when Robin Williams delivered something so intense they couldn't use it. Number 7. The court scene. Near the film's end, Daniel makes an emotional closing statement in court that serves as the dramatic heart of the entire movie, and what audiences see in theaters almost didn't happen that way. The first take had to be scrapped, but not because Williams flubbed his lines or the camera missed something important. The take was scrapped because it was too intense to use. Robin Williams delivered something so raw and real that the entire crew went silent when he finished. Chris Columbus felt it was perhaps a bit too much for the tone of the film, and they reshot the scene with Williams pulling back from wherever he'd gone emotionally. What audiences see in the finished film is the toned-down version, and here's context that makes this even heavier. Sally Field was going through a real divorce while they filmed these scenes. Her marriage to producer Alan Greisman was ending during production, and she later admitted that the argument scenes hit close to home for her. Two people processing real emotional pain in their lives, one of them delivering a performance so devastating that the director couldn't include it in the final cut. The court scene everyone remembers isn't even the most powerful version Robin Williams performed. Somewhere in the Fox archives sits a take that made an entire film crew go quiet. So here's what we actually learned about a film everyone thinks they know. The name came from a World War I widow in Edinburgh who never found out that her husband's surname would become world famous. The character drew inspiration from a real nanny who spent her final years in a Michigan nursing home avoiding reporters. Robin Williams' half-brother appears as a bartender in the pool scene, and his death years later devastated Robin in ways the public never witnessed. Chuck Jones directed the opening animation and brought in the same animator who was simultaneously working on the genie in Aladdin with 5 minutes of footage that most people have never seen. The wig came from the same hands that created Edward Scissorhands' iconic look, and the film's British rating controversy helped create a certification system that's still used across the UK today. But this is just one film from 1993, and there are hidden stories like these buried in every movie from this era. If you want to see more deep dives that pull back the curtain on films you thought you knew completely, hit subscribe. There's always another layer underneath.